We take a look back at some of the biggest, best, and personal favorite storylines from 2022 and then see how those same stories will transpire or might transpire in 2023. Oh yeah, it's Locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked on HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked on HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, I'm Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked on HBCU your first listen of the day, first listen of the year, right? Because this is New Year's, we decided to do a little special episode today. I thought it'd be kind of fun just to do an episode on New Year's, and here we are. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. You guys see it right there on the bottom of the screen. I'll point to it one time because it is the new year. Woo! I was almost off, but I made it. Yeah, I couldn't start off the year wrong. I had to look down and cheat a little bit, but I did point at that there graphic. Do not forget the S on the end if you're on the audio side of things. We're going to have fun in 2023, man. Let me know why you tap into the show, whether it's for entertainment, maybe you just like me. You know, shout out to if you just like me, you tuning in to support me. Or maybe you enjoy the news, right? Informative, entertainment, or just a personal reason. Let me know why you tap into Locked on HBCU every day, and I will respond for sure. So let me know what you guys think and what you guys are feeling. I want to do something special. I wanted to do something special because it's the new year. It's the last or the first day of 2023, and 2022 is gone. And I kind of wanted to talk about just some of my favorite moments from 2022, but then also look forward to 2023. So it's kind of unique where every storyline we're going to look from the 2022 review, but then also how that same storyline could go down in 2023, right? So today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn.com. They're going to help you bring in the most qualified candidates and reach out to them faster. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege, where you can post your job for free. Of course, terms and conditions do apply. And we're going to start off with football. Football is king. So there's no way we're going to start this off not talking about football, but the actual on-field product only. That's it, right? And it ended in an absolute thriller, a phenomenal game, one of the best games I've seen in the HBCU landscape in a while, man. North Carolina Central versus Jackson State was such a fitting conclusion to a 2022 season that had a lot of things going on for it, right? We focused on these two top teams, but at the same time, I felt like this game, though it was an overtime thriller, though it was one of the best games I had seen this year, it perfectly encapsulated the drama, the quality that was included in the just the season in general, right? And we'll talk about that going forward, man. That game was a great ending. It was great fun. There was a lot of eyes on it for a multitude of reasons, and I don't think that it disappointed. In a game where HBCU football is going to be spotlighted, it's going to have all the attention, and people are coming from all different places. Some people don't care about HBCU football. Some are casual, some are in-depth, but all three of those groups are represented in the viewership. That game is the type of people who will make others, or that type of game is the type of game that will bring people in to HBCU football. So it was phenomenal. But that wasn't just it. You look at the SWAC, right? Jackson State had the SWAC. We knew Jackson State was going to be the SWAC winner. It didn't take long, right? So we thought maybe FAMU was going to be able to get with them. That wasn't the case in week one. And after that wasn't the case, we kind of figured, yeah, this is Jackson State's to lose. But it's not like the SWAC was boring. You know, like say it's a book where you know the ending, but the plot was really good. It was a movie where I know how this ends, but I watch it again because everything up until the ending was so good. That's what the SWAC was this year, right? Even in the East, you have FAMU who was able to really steady their ship after those 2 weeks of turbulence with the eligibility, and then also just that game versus Jackson State. Both of those things could rock you up. But Coach Willie Simmons got them boys out there in Tallahassee together. Fun fact, I was watching the South Carolina Notre Dame. I think that's what they're playing. I don't know. But I was watching the South Carolina bowl game, and a quarterback name is Rattler. And my brain just could not get off FAMU. Like, I just couldn't, for some reason, it didn't click to me that Spencer Rattler was his last, like, Rattler was his last name. But anyway, I thought that Willie Simmons did a phenomenal job just rallying those guys and getting them under control. And then you look at Alabama State, who really flew under the radar. I mean, you're the third team in the not even in the conference, in the division. Of course, you're going to fly under the radar, but they had a really good season. I thought that D. Davis had some nice building blocks, and we talked about him last week when talking about Tyler Mackin. Macon. Whatever. Swacking fool. He going to kill me, but whatever. Macon. Right? Macon. That's what happens when you read too fast, guys, and then you type too fast. But yeah. So we talked about him with Tyler Macon, and then also Jeremy Musa and D. Davis's season, how good it was last year. And I just felt those were building blocks. I just felt like it was small parts that didn't quite build to the final destination yet, and they were good. FAMU versus Alabama State was a great game last year, right? We talking about just actual game play. That was a great game. And you look at the SWAC West. Man, the SWAC West was so crazy. I thought my boys was finna get in there, get into a SWAC championship. I was like, man, I might have to go ahead and drive up to Jackson, Mississippi, because TSU ain't been in the SWAC championship in a minute. It didn't happen, of course. But it came down to the last game of the season. It came down to the Bayou Classic. We went into the final week, kind of, right? The Bayou Classic was like separate. So let's say second to last week, but mostly everybody else's last game, except for 4 teams in the SWAC. So we went into the last 2 weeks of the season with 4 teams having the ability to win the SWAC, right? 3 had the best chance, but there was 4 teams who were actually eligible. And you look at it, man, it could have been TSU, it could have been Southern, it could have been Prairie View. Those are the 3 teams who had the best chance. And even going into the Bayou Classic, Southern and Prairie View had a chance still. It just ended up being the Jaguars that pulled it out. This was a phenomenal game. And you flip over to the MEAC. The MEAC was so fascinating this year. Like, when we really just look back at the MEAC, which we probably won't do because nobody's looking back at the SWAC. Nobody's really looking back at the process to get to the final destination. They're just looking at the fact that North Carolina Central won the MEAC, and then also they won the Celebration Bowl. But everything else that came before it, in between that and the start of the season, people aren't really paying attention to. But let me bring you back, because that's why you're here, hopefully. Still tell me why you're here in the comments below, right? Or tweet me, whatever. Now, for me, North Carolina Central looked like the best team in the MEAC at the beginning of the year. Then they lost to South Carolina State. And South Carolina State didn't look that great to start the year. But it's like, okay, conference play is in. They've hit their groove. They know what's going to happen. We at least assume that's what's going to happen. And there's not many teams in the MEAC. So one loss is like, oof, especially to a team like South Carolina State, who we think can be one of the contenders. Man, you come down to the end of the year, South Carolina State ain't even a contender. We looking at Morgan State, really looking at Howard, Morgan State, and North Carolina Central. When you look at the end of the year, those are the 3 most fascinating teams. Central was able to win the conference. Of course, they were able to rebound. They beat everybody except for South Carolina State, right? And even in that game, I felt like they had an opportunity. But then you look at Howard, who they really came along. They were like South Carolina State, but when conference play came in, they kicked it in. And then Morgan State, the fight, the growth that they showed in the first year of the Damon Wilson era, I thought was fascinating. These were really good storylines. You had 3 teams with good storylines in the MEAC, and that's a lot because there's 6 teams in there. So half of the teams in the MEAC had great storylines. Maybe 5 if you were interested in the downturn of Norfolk State and also kind of the downturn of South Carolina State. I thought South Carolina State was way more fascinating. Norfolk got kind of old early. But you're looking at 4 to 5 teams with really fascinating storylines. You're looking at about 6 teams, 7 teams in the SWAC with really fascinating storylines. And in 2023, I'll be watching because the SWAC is wide open. I don't go into next year thinking that Jackson State has a stranglehold. I don't think that FAMU has it. I don't think that Alabama State needs to be underestimated. They've shown that they belong. That game against FAMU was extremely close. That game against Jackson State was one of, if not their best or the biggest test that Jackson State faced in the SWAC last year. Alabama State is a team that should roll over some talent and should be able to compete next year. There's no stranglehold in the East, and we saw how the West went down. There is absolutely no reason to believe that the West has a team that is just head and shoulders above everybody. No reason to believe that. You flip over to the MEAC, I want to see, can Howard continue their ascension? Because Howard was coming at the end of the year, and it's like, okay, maybe we do need to respect Howard. North Carolina Central is rolling over a lot of talent. You still have Khalil Baker and Davius Richard and Latrell Collier. I'm fine. Yes, you got to find some ways to shore up that offensive line because you had Bullock and you had, oh my God, how am I forgetting the guy? This is such a brain fart. It's such a brain fart. And it's the best lineman that they have. But the offensive lineman of the year. And you're missing both of those guys because they're going to be leaving. One for the draft and then one in the transfer portal. There's questions on North Carolina Central, but you have the best quarterback coming back. And you have the best defensive back coming back. These are probably the best defensive player returning, if we're just going to be completely honest about it. Right? So that is stories that I just want to see how are they going to turn out? How are they going to play out in 2023? We looked at how great of a season it was in 2022, but what about 2023? And going forward, we're going to look back at another major storyline. I think arguably the biggest storyline that wasn't on the field last year is the NFL draft and how many prospects were going to get drafted and everything that was around it. So we'll break down that storyline and then look forward to 2023 in the same topic. Before I get into that, however, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. And this is for all my people who either need a job or maybe they're small business owners and you need employees. Both of you, go to LinkedIn. How many times I got to tell you, go to LinkedIn. If you want qualified candidates, if you want candidates that know how to do exactly what you need them to do, you go to LinkedIn, you look at their resume, you realize they're qualified, and you don't waste your time interviewing 27 people who don't fit the mold that you want. Reach out to the people that you want to reach out to faster. It's just a smarter way of doing business. I don't know how many times or how many different ways I need to elaborate or articulate this idea. Go to LinkedIn. Use the purple hashtag #HiringFrame and post your job for free, no cost at all. All you have to do is go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. And as we keep on rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, stay on this app and check out Locked On Sports Today with Peter Bukowski. He is bringing in the local experts to break down the national stories and all of the biggest stories, kind of similar to how we're doing today, but we're just putting a little twist of looking back and then looking forward at the same exact topic. I hope you guys are having fun with this. I thought it'll be a nice little unique idea to kick off the year. And let's look at the NFL draft, because this was a 3-day event in the spring of 2022. Every year it's a 3-day event, right? You have round 1 on day 1. You have rounds 2 and 3 on day 2. And then you have rounds 4 through 7 on day 3. But you got to understand the draft process is way longer. And I could just say it's 3 months. That probably wouldn't be fair, but let's just go ahead and put it out to that, because that's when the big bowl games, right? The big pre-draft bowls start. That's when around the time that the collegiate season is over for the FBS level as well, right? We just saw some really good college football playoff games last night between TCU and between TCU and Michigan, and then also Ohio State and Georgia. Shout out TCU and everybody who didn't want them in the playoffs because of X, Y, and Z. I'm really happy that they won that game, but that's not here nor there, right? But let's talk about the NFL draft. You have those pre-draft bowls, right? And last year was a little bit unique because one of the biggest, you know what? I'm going to be honest, if we're just being transparent, I think the biggest development and one of the biggest new things for HBCU athletes is the fact that Locked On HBCU had Coach G and Draft HBCU representing 10 weeks in a row, counting down our top 10. Now, while some might not like that, maybe I need to practice some humility and practice some modesty, so I will. And I'll say another one of the big things that happened, though that was pretty fun, and I'm sure we will run it back next year. This year. Yeah, we'll run it back this year. I guess it didn't take long for me to slip up and still think we're in 2022. But one of the biggest things for HBCU athletes and nationally recognized is the fact that you had the HBCU Combine. And then you also had the HBCU Legacy Bowl. You had both of those things. So this was a way to isolate HBCU athletes to increase the spotlight that was placed upon them. Right? We talked about this with Azias on the last episode on Friday. And then I also talked about it with Steve Weitz, the idea of isolation and the benefits versus the detractions for that. Now, I thought it was nice once explained. I understood the reasoning, and you're looking at a situation where you don't want to be swallowed up by the Power 5 schools that all of these scouts want to talk to and they pass up. No, all of these guys, all of these scouts, all these girls are here for you. And the HBCU Combine was kind of Senior Bowl adjacent because it was right before the Senior Bowl at the same place. And I think that really did help with the scout outlook and the scout attendance. I can't wait to see what it looks like next year. Right, but hold on, let's not jump. The Legacy Bowl was nationally televised. You had it on NFL Network. And some of these players weren't able to get to a bowl, so they go ahead and come out and they go to these games, and now you get more publicity here. Now we can flip and look towards 2023. I think that's the way I should point if I'm talking about forward. We're just going to point forward. There we go. But, yeah, so you look forward to 2023, and I wonder how the Combine attendance will be in next year because, yeah, you had a lot of scouts. I think either 30 or 31 of the 32 scouts, 30 or 31 of the 32 scouts from the NFL were out there, maybe all 32, but I don't think so. I think there was one or two teams that were missing. I can't remember which one, but it was well represented, right? Like, these guys were well represented at the HBCU Combine. They had a lot of people who were out there ready to see what they were going to be able to do. And I still think that Will Adams got onto the Washington Commanders practice squad strictly off of what he did at the HBCU Combine. So I think it was a very valuable and a very necessary event. And now we're moving it to be away from the Senior Bowl, right? So that's the idea of 2023. We're looking, now it's not going to have that Senior Bowl backing. So everything you're gonna do is gonna be off the strength of you. It's attached to the Legacy Bowl. I don't know the Legacy Bowl attendance as far as NFL representation. I don't know what that was like last year, but I do like the fact that they're together in New Orleans. There's certain things you got to look at when how you were treated, and I don't think the Senior Bowl did anything wrong as far as how they treated HBCU athletes. I just don't think they were well prepared for the conditions. You can't decide what the weather's going to be. You can't snap your fingers and say, I want a sunny 80-degree day. That would have been great for it to be that, but it wasn't. But at the same time, I don't need you to control weather, but the idea that these guys were out here running in terrible conditions, I do think was a problem. Like, it was too cold for you to have great times, right? It was too cold for you to be loose. There was just some restriction based on the weather. I want that to be fixed. And I think that they should have had a better plan. There should have been some way to do this indoors or something, not in that little corridor that made everything terrible. And I'm not even speaking from a personal side. You can ask anybody who was there. It was terrible. I'm talking to players in the airport like, man, this is horrendous. But I don't even mean from that. You just got to be able to take care of your player and allow them to put the best numbers up that they could. And I just don't think they could do that with the weather and the way that it was handled. So now you go to New Orleans. Hopefully it's better weather. It was cold at the Legacy Bowl too. But you have an indoor facility that you can go to for those Combine events. You're not going to play the game indoors. You're not trying to run away from conditions. But if you're talking about running a 40, who wants to run a 40 in cold weather with wind? Your body just is not going to be properly warmed up for that. So that's one of the things that I like to see changing in 2023. They've already announced that it is. It'll be in New Orleans. It'll be that Monday through... It'll be that Monday. The HBCU Combine will be that Monday. And then Tuesday through Friday will be practices for the Legacy Bowl. And then on Saturday, you'll have the actual Legacy Bowl. So fingers crossed that I'm able to get in there and be a part of that event in some capacity. I might not be able to stay for the whole week down there in New Orleans, but I definitely look to be there at some point, whether that's as a fan in the stands like I was at the Legacy Bowl last year, or on the sidelines in the press box, which I hope to be this year. We'll see what 2023 holds for us, but let's look at some of my personal favorite storylines from 2022, and then also look forward and see how they're going to transpire in 2023. Before I get into that, however, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. They have you covered with more odds, props, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is the #1 place for all of your sports wagering. I hope you put some money down. I had a friend of mine who put a big-time parlay down. I got to see how it transpired. But, man, I ain't going to tell y'all because, counting folks' pockets and whatnot. But, y'all, my friend put down some big-time money. Told me, you got to put that down on BetOnline. Of course. No doubt about it. And that's exactly what he did, right? You're looking at the NBA playoffs are going to be coming up in a couple of months. The NBA regular season is really heating up because we're past Christmas. So now things are starting to get serious. The NFL playoffs are only a week away, right? Yeah, a week after today. or 2 weeks after today, right? You'll have one more game, and then you have the playoffs. Everything is around the corner, so it's the prime time to get down with BetOnline. You know, the fastest and the easiest with a wager on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. And we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked on HBCU, looking back at some of my personal favorite storylines from 2022 and just kind of looking forward to how those will transpire in 2023. Storylines are not dying, right? They come and they go, but there's certain storylines that stick, certain storylines that you can look at last year and then look forward, right? Because you look at the NFL draft. You look at, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this real quick because I forgot to say this about the NFL draft. Let me tell you about the HBCU NFL draft class. You had Ja'Tyre Carter, Joshua Williams, Jacoby Durant, James Houston. Joshua Williams has been really ball productive, right? He's had 7 pass defenses. You look at Jacoby Durant, he has the most. This is true. Jacoby Durant, with 3 interceptions on the year, has the most interception return yards this season of any player. Rookie, veteran, HBCU, PWI, D2, NAIA, whatever. The most yards returned on interceptions all year. He just had an 80-yard pick 6. James Houston had 5 sacks in his first 4 games, including a sack in every single one of those first 4 games. This guy has been a monster. These players have been monsters. So I had to make sure I mentioned it. I can't believe I forgot when I went on my tangent about the destination or the location of the HBCU Combine. Now, allow me to talk about my favorite storylines from 2022. And I'm a big football guy. Y'all can tell we talked about it in the first 2 segments. But then you look at my favorite storylines are probably basketball, truthfully. And I've started to discover a little bit of love for basketball recently. And I'll look at the Savannah State versus Benedict College women's basketball rivalry. So Savannah State just could not beat Benedict College. Their time since rejoining the SWAC, they have been 0-4 coming into the season against Benedict College. So you're looking at a team that just was a monkey on your back, but you undefeated. You run into Benedict College. Benedict College knocks you off. Gives you your first loss of the season. All right, whatever. We get back on the horse. We see Benedict College again this season. The second time we face them, we beat them. So it's like finally, like I finally can breathe. I finally was able to get over that hump that was Benedict College. At this time, they still only have 1 loss. So now you go all the way to the conference championship. Who do you think Savannah State gonna see? Right, and this was the team I really got behind because it was really fun to watch their undefeated streak. They had their hottest start in school history. Who do you think they see in the championship game, in the tournament championship? Yeah, they see Benedict College. So now it's like, okay, y'all had our number. You beat us the first 5 times that we played in the last couple of years. But I won last time. I finally got that. I know I can beat you now. Lightning don't strike twice. Benedict College wins. Benedict College is just a team that had Savannah State's number. And we're going to see what it's like in 2023. Savannah State had 3 losses last year. They lost against Benedict College the first time, lost against Benedict College in the tournament championship, and then they lost in the playoffs. Those are their 3 losses last year. So 2 losses in the regular season, both to the same team. They just could not beat Benedict. They got them that one time. Seems like luck. We'll see what it is in 2023. These 2 teams are going to face off on a back-to-back this year. So it's going to be, both games are going to be in the same week. It'll be extremely exciting to see what happens because this is the storyline. Like I said, storylines don't die. They continue. And we're going to be looking forward to this rivalry in 2023. I think it's in January or February, late in the month, that you're going to see these go down. So we will be talking about that. We will be focusing on those games, and we'll definitely highlight that as the season progresses. And then one of my other favorite storylines is the SWAC logjam. So think about, and this is in basketball, men's basketball. Think about the SWAC West in football, but not with everybody kind of just failing. Like PV kept failing. Alcorn kept failing. Southern failed and had enough other teams fail that they had their opportunity to succeed and win the SWAC West. Texas Southern in the last game, they failed. So it was a bunch of teams who just kind of fell, and it wasn't even against each other for real. That's how the late game or the late year went for the SWAC West. But in the SWAC basketball, it was a bunch of teams just beating up on each other. Halfway through the year, or halfway through SWAC play, you have 5 teams who are really in contention. And then Alcorn hit up. Then TSU hit up. And once those started to hit up, now you're seeing them rise above everybody else. So now FAMU has to cool down because they aren't the big dog now. Now Grambling and Southern have to kind of just taper. Those 2 teams did not play as well in the second half. Meanwhile, Texas Southern and Alcorn are the only 2 teams from that 5-team bunch to actually improve their record from the first half of the SWAC to the second half of the SWAC. They really started to play really good basketball. They go ahead and, Texas Southern, the best out. I mean, I ain't like really saying nothing. We know what it is, but they like the best out, and they go ahead and beat Alcorn in the SWAC championship game, and they go ahead and go to the NCAA tournament yet again. Well, this year, how does it look? In 2023, you're looking at Grambling having 2 Power 5 victories, 3 games won by the SWAC in the SWAC Pac-12 championship or Legacy Series. You're looking at 3 teams who have Power 5 victories, 4 teams. I think Alcorn has a group of 5 victory as well. This is a really hot conference right now, and we're going to break them down even more. So I'm going to stop myself short because that's exactly what we're going to do on tomorrow's episode. We're going to preview SWAC basketball because I can't wait to see what this conference is able to do going into 2023. Same thing with the MEAC, but you have to check that on tomorrow's episode. Happy New Year's, everybody. Enjoy yourself. I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports Today with Peter Bukowski and all of the local experts. In the meantime, in between time, go ahead and blow up some poppers, do whatever you got to do, and be responsible on New Year's. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.